welcome back to Nails Before Films. It's your favorite disgrace to society, and I'm back to reviewing movies. Today, I'll be reviewing Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. It's a rather underwhelming end to Ethan Hunt's story and made Dead Reckoning Part 1 worse. However, it's not terrible. Final Reckoning is still entertaining, the stunts are still amazing, so I wouldn't say it's a complete waste of time and money. I think it's worth watching on the big screen, even just for the action, but be prepared to leave the theater a bit unsatisfied. Before I get into The Final Reckoning, I reviewed Dead Reckoning Part 1 over a year ago. Check that out if you like, just know that I was way too soft on that movie. I was hoping that Final Reckoning would fix some of the problems, but sadly, it didn't happen. Anyway, let's get into it. Final Reckoning doesn't make a lot of sense and drags on from time to time. The movie is almost 3 hours long. I wasn't bored per se, but I felt pretty tired after leaving the theater, so it's definitely a bit lengthy. The first hour or so is also lackluster. There are so many flashbacks from the whole franchise, and they even repeat some of the same footage. We get it, it's the last Mission Impossible. No need to shove it in our face. The cold open where Ethan and Grace get kidnapped by Gabriel shouldn't have happened at all. Why would Kittredge send Grace to catch Ethan? She was his ally in the last movie. What makes you think she won't help him? Unsurprisingly, Grace does exactly that, and Gabriel kidnaps the two. But because his henchmen are garbage, they immediately get away. The fight scene even happens off-screen, which is uncharacteristic for Mission Impossible. We only see Grace looking horrified like in a low-budget horror movie. I miss films like Rogue Nation, where we get amazing stunts like Ethan hanging from a plane from the get-go. I get that the cold open is supposed to reintroduce characters and put together the team, but it's poorly done. They could have just broken Paris out of prison with Grace being there. The team gets together and goes to Gabriel's hideout. He isn't there, so Ethan goes into the cyber coffin. The entity tells him it's planned so the plot can happen. The last part is still dumb, but at least we won't waste so much time getting nowhere. Next, of course, Luther dies. What better way to tug on the audience's heartstrings than killing a character that's been with Ethan since the very beginning? But they also made Luther terminally ill, so you feel less bad. To be fair, Luther's death is done better than Ilsa's. However, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Why would you let Luther, a defenseless sick person, hold on to the one thing that can defeat the entity? It's so dumb. Luther didn't have to die if the poison pill was on someone else or somewhere secure. Anyway, after Luther is killed, Ethan splits with his team and gets himself captured. The others have to find the coordinates of the sunken submarine, and Ethan has to get there to retrieve the entity's source code. The team then has to rescue Ethan right on time so he doesn't die. You might ask, even if they have the coordinates, how can Ethan get to the submarine by himself? I kid you not, after getting captured, all Ethan does is ask people to trust him, and somehow it works. They trust him so much that he's given access to an aircraft carrier, gets on a secret submarine, and the crew is even nice enough to give him a top secret diving suit. And Ethan's only reasoning is that they have to do what the entity doesn't expect, which is to trust him. It's unrealistic that all these people choose to believe Ethan without question. It's too idealized. After getting everyone to trust him somehow, Ethan gets to the sunken sub to retrieve the source code. And the underwater stunt is absolutely amazing. There's no doubt about that. With the rising water level, the rolling sub, and the torpedoes, that scene keeps audiences on the edge of their seats, especially if you watch it on the big screen. However, I'm not a fan of how it ends. I know Tom Cruise looks amazing for his age, but having him stripped down to his underwear is completely unnecessary and makes the scene a bit ridiculous. It's already extremely unbelievable that Ethan could survive. Having the suit at least makes it seem more likely. I don't get why it's necessary to make it even more difficult than it already is. Anyway, as if getting the source code isn't complicated enough, there's more. Because Gabriel has the poison pill, they have to go to a bunker and get him to put it into the source code. You think that's it? Nope, they then have to trap the entity in a high-end USB right before it launches all nuclear weapons. It's just convoluted, so much so that the movie has to keep reminding us what the plan is. From the last movie, I thought this one would be about getting the source code and killing the entity, but they had to add the part about trapping it in a USB. Why? Just so that the other team has something to do to mimic what happened in Fallout? And for some reason, Benji is severely injured so that Grace and Paris can do all the work. Benji is so sidelined in this movie. Ethan makes him the team leader, but all he does is go over what to do. He doesn't actually get to do anything. This is most likely Simon Pegg's last Mission Impossible as well, so it's disappointing to see his character get sidelined so much. Anyway, let's go back to Ethan. He has to chase down Gabriel because Kidra's there to make things difficult so the biplane stunt can happen. Don't get me wrong, the stunt is impressive, another reason to watch this movie in theaters, but how they get to that point is a mess. Gabriel escapes after a gunfight breaks out among the three parties, which makes no sense. You're all gonna die from the entity's nuclear strike if the poison pill isn't plugged into the source code. Why are you running away? And it's stupid how Gabriel tries to kill Ethan and make his plane crash. You do realize Ethan has the source code and it might be destroyed if he crashes, right? Even worse, the way Gabriel dies is so dumb. He's supposed to be the big bad who's got a history with Ethan, so the final fight should have ended whatever's between them and brought Ethan and the audience closure. But no, he dies because of his own stupidity. Ethan finally gets him off the plane, but Gabriel holds on to the seatbelt so that he doesn't fall. Then he's like, haha, I have the only parachute, bye, and let's go. I kid you not. He slams into the plane's tail and his head splits open, instantly killing him. It's almost like a gag. I would have laughed if it weren't so anticlimactic. It's a bad joke. I get that they're trying to be ironic, like Gabriel dies of his own arrogance, but it's so dumb. And it gets even worse. Turns out there are extra parachutes in that plane for Ethan. 2 even. Where do these parachutes even come from? That plane was Gabriel's. How did he not know? What was he so smug about then? It makes no sense. Then the usual happens. Ethan plugs the poison pill just in time for Grace to snatch the trap entity right before it launches the nuclear weapons. Yay. Naturally, the team gathers around to celebrate, right? Nope. The movie ends with all of them standing far apart in a busy square just nodding and smiling at each other. The only person who goes to Ethan is Grace, but only to give him the entity USB. She then leaves and all of them go their separate way. What the heck? You guys are a team that just saved the world. What's wrong with a group hug? Not even Benji, who's been around since MI3, goes to shake Ethan's hand or something. This is most likely the end of Ethan's story, so why can't they get together like the end of Ghost Protocol or Fallout? I would have loved to see them just being together and having a laugh now that the world is safe again. It doesn't sit right with me that Ethan doesn't get a proper goodbye and ends up alone in his last movie. So now that the story is complete, I can finally criticize Dead Reckoning Part 1 and Final Reckoning as a whole. I'm more than disappointed that Final Reckoning doesn't fix some of Dead Reckoning's issues, most notably Ilsa's death. Ilsa dies in the last movie because Gabriel claims that it will result in him obtaining the key. I never get how that works, and in the end, it doesn't work. Gabriel doesn't get the key, so why must Ilsa die? I was hoping that her death would have more impact in Final Reckoning, or maybe she faked her death all along, which would explain why the entity's plan failed. But no, nothing. She's barely even mentioned in this movie. The villain also sucked in these 2 movies. The entity is such a nothing villain. At no point did they even try to explain the entity's motive. Why does it go rogue? Why does it choose Gabriel? Why does it want to end the world? What are its plans after causing Armageddon? And why does it want to play God in the first place? Don't care, just accept that AI is evil. It's also generic and vague. The entity is also extremely stupid for an all-knowing AI. Everything it predicts is wrong. It predicted that Ilsa's death would ensure Gabriel's obtaining the key. That didn't happen. It predicted that Paris would betray them, but arguably, that prediction led to said betrayal. For some reason, it tells Ethan its plan. Why? You're basically helping him come up with a plan to kill you. And if the entity is so smart and can predict all outcomes, then how come it can't predict what happens if everyone trusts Ethan? If it's really so powerful, then it should be able to think of every scenario and have a plan for each one. Apparently not. It fails to predict anything correctly throughout 2 movies. And the whole entity cult is so unnecessary as well. They only do 2 things in Final Reckoning. Attacking Ethan in the sub, which didn't need to happen at all, and killing a random military guy. What, am I supposed to feel bad for this person who doesn't matter to the plot? They could have just said that the entity took over the weapons faster than they thought. Why kill a random guy? Anyway, Gabriel, the other main bad guy, is no better. The flashbacks of him and Ethan go nowhere. It's never explained what happened between them. I thought Final Reckoning would go deeper into Ethan's life before IMF, but nothing. They just show the same flashback over and over again. The fact that Gabriel killed Luther and 2 women who were important to Ethan doesn't come into play at all. He barely shows any emotion when he faces Gabriel. Even Paris is angrier than him. This is another reason why the way Gabriel dies is terrible. The guy had taken so much from Ethan. I expected some final confrontation where he could avenge his friends. But no, Gabriel dies as a joke. There is absolutely no reason for Gabriel to have a personal tie with Ethan. He might as well be another random villain because the story would work exactly the same. Besides the terrible villains, another thing I got sick of was how the 2 movies abused the right on time gimmick. It's way too overused, to the point that it doesn't get you nervous or excited anymore. In Dead Reckoning, Ethan saves Grace by slamming into the train and taking out bad guys with him. It's already unbelievable that he makes it onto the train, but slamming right into the car where Grace is just too unrealistic. Same thing with Final Reckoning. To get the source code, they already have to get coordinates, get to the sub, and save Ethan in an extremely tight window. But they do it again with the entity USB. The right on time thing works in Fallout because it's the climax of the whole movie. Everything builds up to it. When you use it too many times, it just becomes unrealistic and loses its magic. I also don't understand why Final Reckoning felt the need to connect the entity with the rabbit's foot from MI3. It's not the most terrible thing in the movie, just another one of those completely unnecessary components infecting this movie. And stop saying Reckoning or Final Reckoning. We get it, it's in the title. It's not cool when you say it over and over again. That's basically my thought on Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Unfortunately, it's an underwhelming finale. It actually made me want to rewatch Ghost Protocol or Fallout because of how disappointed I was. The stunts are still mind-blowing, and I can tell that the crew put a lot of heart into them. But sadly, sometimes it feels like the plot is only there to string up the actions. However, I still think it's a movie worth watching in the theaters, and I'm happy it's doing well at the box office. But I sincerely hope that they don't make new Mission Impossible movies with this new team. Grace, Paris, Degas, they're not terrible characters, but Ethan's the one who really holds the movie together. I can't imagine a MI movie with this team, especially if the story is lackluster like the last 2 films. Hope you guys like my review and nails. I did the entity, the key, the torpedo scene, the biplane scene, and the entity USB. And the USB actually glows. I know these are not my best work, but I don't like the movie that much anyways. As always, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment, share, do what you want. Keep nailing it and rewatch Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout people. They're way better than Dead and Final Reckoning.